Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more Entitled People stories. In this story, my $415,000 house was vandalized by entitled squatting strangers while I was not at home. Here is what happened. Alright, here's the thing that a lot of people don't get. In case you're wondering, I live in one of the most overinflated, gentrified cities in the United States, Nashville, Tennessee. A ton of people are moving here. It used to be like 200 per day or something ridiculous like that, and it's attracted a lot of people and caused real estate to go way up, thus forcing a lot of people out. Recently, sadly, my mother passed away and left me and my brother with a large inheritance. The weird thing is that my brother John and I are not on good terms. He was estranged from my mom for the longest time, and recently I found it even more weird that he popped up and started to make amends when my mother was gravely ill. I found it actually kind of degrading and a big slap in the face all these years, and just now he shows up when the timing is right to collect on his inheritance. Well, he did, and I was livid. But what is even more insane was what went down when I used my inheritance to buy a rental property here in Nashville. I love this city, it's growing, expanding at an alarming rate, so I thought I would cash in and buy a rental that would pay me dividends for years to come. But then things got out of hand, like really out of hand, and let's just say that a group of squatters wreaked havoc big time on my property. I own some more properties all over the nation, and I love this market for its potential. I bought the home in a prestigious neighborhood where I knew that I could get away with hefty returns and not deal with the political BS of most neighborhoods in Nashville. When I bought the house, I renovated it from top to bottom and put in a bunch of new fixtures. After fixing it up though, I fell in love with it and decided to call it my own home. I did not want to rent it out anymore. Sadly though, some other people wanted to take residence of it the illegal way. Before I go in further though, there's a little known law here in the United States called adverse possession or squatters' rights. It basically says that anyone can take possession of a property by occupying it for a period of time. This statutory period in TN is anywhere between 7 to 20 years. Now, being a landlord and real estate investor, I was not thrown off by this law nor squatters who like to take advantage of opportunities when they saw them. I just did not know it would be in this neighborhood and that my brother was part of a vast conspiracy to actually take control of my private property. To make matters worse, I already was not too happy with him and how he handled my mom last year. She was sick and needed care, and he didn't help out at all. And then he shows up out of the blue, and not only that, but he decides to mess with my fair portion of the inheritance. I couldn't stand it, but this is how I found out about it. I had come back home from a long vacation, almost 6 months. I told my brother that he could stay at my new home because he didn't have a place of his own and he was moving around the country quite a bit. When I get back, I noticed that the windows to the house were open and that the lights were on. But there was no sign of my brother, his car was not even there. I go up and try to unlock the door with my key, and it wouldn't open. I call my brother up but no answer, and I leave him a voicemail. Hey man, just wanted to see what the hell is going on. I cannot even get in the front door. Where are you? I go around the back and the locks are changed too on the back patio door. I start to panic and that's when I notice 2 bumps sitting on my sofa. They are sitting there watching TV and popping beers back there. I go to the front and ring the doorbell. No answer. I call my brother and start screaming in the phone. John, what the F? Who are these people in my house? No answer still from him. I text him thinking maybe his voicemail is full. Still no response. I start banging on the door after the 2 dudes in my house don't answer the doorbell after multiple rings. I get nervous and I almost call the cops. But I calmed myself down and went back to my car. I guess they didn't see me in my car or thought I left, but one of them came out, and let me tell you, this was probably one of the worst confrontations I've had in my life. And I thought renters were bad. This dude comes out of my house, dreadlocks and all, with sagging pants, a dirty wife beater on, and dirt stains all over him. I get out of my car and flag him down. Hey, just what in the F do you think you're doing? He grins at me and sips his beer, then throws it down on the driveway. Then he starts running back inside my house. At this point, I am livid. I run after him and he closes the door too quick for me to enter. I bang on the door so loud the neighbors can hear me, and I have a pretty large yard too. I notice some of them peeping out their doors. What the F? Open the door! This is my house. I text my brother again and at this point I'm panicking. This is my house, get out! Nobody comes to the door, so I go back around again. I noticed they turned off the lights but I could see them inside. Hey, what the hell? They didn't answer me, but they looked at me and laughed. One of them finally comes to the window to talk to me and says, "We're gonna call the cops on you. You need to get off our property." I'm thinking, what the hell is your problem? This ain't your property. I start screaming at him, telling him hell no, this is actually my property and he needs to vacate immediately. I even showed them the sale of the home to me on the Redfin app and they wouldn't budge. I told them to get out and they just stood there laughing, and one of them threatened again to call the cops even though I knew they would not because they were the ones trespassing. After what seemed like hours trying to convince them to let me in my house, they insisted that they were not leaving. I guess I got so fed up that I didn't think to call the police. I thought since I had handled so many tenants with my other properties that I could take this on my own. But I was wrong. These idiots ended up making a fool of me and rubbing it in my face. I could hear them trashing all my new fixtures in the home, and I even saw one of them defecate all over the living room floor on my new carpet. These dudes were complete horrendous lowlifes. When I finally had it and screamed at them that I was going to call the police, that's when one of them took a hammer and started bashing my walls. I was mortified. I called the cops immediately because who knows what else they were gonna do. When the cops showed up, that's when the ugly truth got to me. The two squatters kept chiding to the police that they were not moving for anything, and if they were to be forcibly removed, they would threaten violence. I mean, who knows what these bozos had in there? Guns? More cops started to show up and all the neighborhood at this point comes out to see what the F is going on here. I'm sitting there soaked in sweat calling my brother wondering where the hell he is and talking with the cops trying to get them to remove these idiots. That's when the squatters started to ramble off some crap about their rights and how they've been living and occupying this home for some time now, like years. What the hell? I reason with them and tell the cops they are falsifying information. One of the squatters pulls out a utility bill and shows it to the cops through the window. Then they start muttering off stuff like, if you don't get off our property and stop harassing us, we will sue you all or worse resort to violence, so you better all leave now. After a tense standoff which lasted for hours, the cops brought in a negotiator and convinced the squatters to come out. So then I run in the house as soon as they were arrested. When they finally walked out, the cops put them in handcuffs immediately. I find the house trashed completely though, with extensive damage to the walls and even an infestation of bugs. Roaches everywhere. I go back inside and the negotiator, who's a lead detective for MNPD, starts telling me all this stuff about the squatters and how they had heard of some unruly behavior while I was gone. Apparently, the neighbors reported two people coming and going and causing a scene. That's when I found out that my brother was actually involved in this. He had told these squatters that the property was abandoned and just sitting there for years. He even helped them move in and change the locks because the investigator looked into it and the locksmith bill was charged to him. They immediately put out a search warrant for his arrest and found him in another property squatting a few miles down the road. It turned out that after his court sentencing that he confessed to helping out the squatters so that they could maintain fair possession of the property. They had lied about how long they lived there, forged utility bills and sought to damage the home significantly, claiming it was a storm so that they could receive an insurance claim payment. All the while I'm on vacation. I was infuriated. They were charged with trespassing, vandalism and destruction of property. My brother, who was in on it, was charged with conspiracy and was actually sent behind bars. My feeling was that somehow he thought he could sneak around me and get the insurance money by using these squatters who thought they could stake their claim. There were also some other people involved at the title company, utility office and a law firm who helped them forge documents and make it legal. It was just insane. All this for a piece of property that someone could have gone out and gotten the right way. And I was just left picking up the mess. Needless to say, I sued them for every penny for the cost of repairs and emotional distress. Actually, I ended up selling the property though for even more, and now I live elsewhere. I went back recently to talk with some of the neighbors. They were kind and compassionate and they emphasized with me for all the stress and heartache it caused me. I'm glad I made it out of that situation alive. It just goes to show how greedy and over the top some people can be. And yeah, right, stars, honestly, if you have a brother like this, you absolutely don't need any enemies anymore, because that guy is worse than any enemy could ever be. Almost like a James Bond villain or something. Anyway, the next one is titled, My tenant stopped paying rent, threatened to kill me, and then turned into a squatter. And by the way, this story was sent to me by a viewer. So let me tell you, being a landlord is not all sunshine and roses. Sure, it can be a good source of income, but sometimes you get stuck with a tenant from hell who makes you regret ever thinking about renting out your property. And this is a story of one of those tenants, a guy named Mark, and how he pushed me to my absolute limit. It all started out normally enough. Mark seemed like a decent guy when he first applied. Good references, steady job, the whole 9 yards. He was a little rough around the edges, but hey, nobody's perfect, right? He signed a 1-year lease on my little rental property, a cozy 2-bedroom bungalow I owned a few miles from where I live. The first few months were fine, rent was always on time, no complaints from the neighbors, everything seemed hunky-dory. Then, things started to go south. It began with late rent payments. I would get excuses like, my paycheck got delayed, lost track of the date, you know, the usual song and dance. I tried to be understanding, gave him a couple of chances, but it became a recurring theme. Then came the noise complaints, loud music at all hours, shouting matches late at night, the works. I talked to Mark, sent him warning letters, even got the police involved a couple of times. And yes, he would quiet down for a bit and then it would all start over again. Things escalated to a whole new level when he stopped paying rent altogether. I was at my wit's end. I started the eviction process, but it was like pulling teeth. Mark knew how to play the system, dragging out the process with delay tactics and bogus claims. One afternoon I went over to the property to serve him with the latest eviction notice. And well, I found him outside tinkering with his beat-up old truck. He looked up as I approached, a sneer spreading across his face. "What do you want?" he growled, tossing his wrench onto the cracked concrete driveway. "Mark, you know why I'm here," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "You are months behind on rent and you need to vacate the property." "This is my home," he spat back, taking a menacing step towards me. "I'm not going anywhere." "Mark, I've been more than patient with you," I said, holding my ground despite the tremor of fear running through me. "You've ignored every notice, every warning. Now, I have no choice but to proceed with the eviction." "You try and evict me and you'll regret it," he snarled, his face contorted with rage. "I know where you live. You come near me or my home again and I will—" His voice trailed off, but the implied threat hung heavy in the air. I left, my heart pounding in my chest. I'd never been threatened like that before. I went straight to the police and filed a report, but they didn't seem too concerned. "He has not actually done anything yet," the officer said with a shrug. "We cannot act until he does." I was furious. My own tenant was threatening me and the police would not lift a finger. I felt helpless, angry and scared all at the same time. But I was determined to get my property back, even if it meant taking matters into my own hands. Weeks turned into months and the eviction process dragged on, each court date delayed by Mark's legal maneuvering. I was bleeding money, lawyer fees, lost rent, not to mention the mounting stress. I was starting to lose hope and then finally, a breakthrough. The judge ruled in my favor, granting the eviction. I was ecstatic. Finally, this nightmare was coming to an end. I went to the property with the court order, a sense of relief washing over me. This time I brought a couple of burly friends for backup just in case. We knocked on the door, the court order clutched in my sweaty hands. No answer. We knocked again, louder this time, still nothing. My heart sank. He was gone. He had cleared out before we could serve him with the eviction. He's probably long gone, one of my friends said, peering through a window. It looks like he took most of his stuff too. I felt a surge of triumph, but it was short-lived. As we stepped inside, the stench hit us like a wall. Stale beer, cigarettes and something else, something rancid. The place was just trashed. Furniture overturned, garbage strewn everywhere, holes punched in the walls. It looked like a bomb had gone off. But the worst part? Mark had left something behind, scrawled across the living room wall in what looked like charcoal, a chilling message. "You cannot get rid of me that easily." My blood ran cold. He was gone, but he was still haunting me. This was not over, not by a long shot. So I spent the next few weeks cleaning up the mess, repairing the damage, and trying to erase the chilling message on the wall. It was exhausting both physically and emotionally, but I was determined to reclaim my property, to wipe away every trace of Mark and his reign of terror. Just as I was starting to feel like I could breathe again, I received a letter in the mail that sent a chill down my spine. It was from a lawyer representing Mark. He was suing me. The lawsuit claimed that I had illegally evicted him, causing him emotional distress and financial hardship. He was demanding a ridiculous sum of money in damages. I was just floored. This guy was unbelievable. Not only had he trashed my property and threatened my life, but now he was trying to sue me for legally evicting him. It was outrageous. I hired a lawyer of my own, a shark of a woman named Miss Jackson, who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes. She listened patiently as I recounted the whole saga, shaking her head in disbelief. "Don't worry," she said, a steely glint in her eye. "We will fight this. We will expose him for the fraud that he is." And the fight we did. The lawsuit dragged on for months, a back and forth battle of emotions, depositions, and court appearances. It was grueling, expensive, and emotionally draining, but Miss Jackson was a force to be reckoned with. She systematically dismantled Mark's case, exposing his lies and inconsistencies. She presented evidence of his non-payment of rent, the noise complaints, the police reports, the damage to the property, and, of course, his threats against me. She even managed to dig up his rental history, which was littered with similar cases of unpaid rent and property damage. Mark, on the other hand, crumbled under oath. His story changed with every question, and his lies became more and more outlandish. It was clear to everyone in the courtroom that he was a con artist trying to shake me down for the money. Finally, after months of legal wrangling, the judge had heard enough. He dismissed Mark's lawsuit with prejudice, meaning he couldn't file it again. He also ordered Mark to pay all of my legal fees and the back rent that he owed. I was ecstatic. Justice had prevailed. I had not only cleared my name, but also exposed Mark for the con artist he was. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Mark, it turned out, had one more trick up his sleeve. A few weeks after the lawsuit was dismissed, I received a frantic call from the new tenants I had just rented the bungalow to. "There's someone here trying to claim that he's the owner," the woman on the phone cried. "He's trying to break in." I raced over to the property, my heart pounding in my chest. Sure enough, there was Mark trying to kick down the front door. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted, my voice shaking with anger. "This is my house," he roared back, his face contorted with rage. "I'm not letting you steal it from me." It turned out that Mark, in a last-ditch effort to hold onto the property, had filed a fraudulent deed with the county claiming that I had sold him the house. He had then used this fake deed to try and evict my new tenants and move back in. I could not believe his audacity. This guy was like a cockroach, impossible to get rid of. But this time I was ready for him. I immediately called the police and Miss Jackson. With the evidence of the fraudulent deed and his attempted break-in, the police arrested Mark on the spot. This time there would be no escaping justice. Miss Jackson filed criminal charges against Mark for fraud, forgery, and attempted burglary. He was facing serious jail time. The trial was a mere formality. The evidence against Mark was overwhelming and my lawyer ripped his defense to shreds. The jury found him guilty on all counts. The judge, clearly not amused by Mark's antics, sentenced him to the maximum sentence allowed by law. As he was led away in handcuffs, he shot me a look of pure hatred, but I knew he could not touch me anymore. I had won. The road to getting my property back and putting Mark behind bars was long, stressful and expensive. It took a toll on me, no doubt. But through it all, I learned some valuable lessons. I learned the importance of thorough tenant screening, of trusting my gut instinct, and of never backing down from a bully. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the only way to get justice is to fight for it yourself. While the legal battle was over, the experience left me with a lingering sense of unease. The image of Mark's hateful glare as he was led away, the chilling message on the wall, it all served as a constant reminder of the nightmare I had endured. I decided to sell the bungalow. It was not just about the money, although recouping some of my losses was a factor. It was about reclaiming my peace of mind. The property held too many bad memories and I needed a fresh start. I found a buyer within a few months, a young couple excited to make the bungalow their first home. As I signed the final papers, a wave of relief washed over me. It was finally over, I was free. The experience with Mark had a profound impact on me. It shook me to my core, made me question my judgment and tested my resilience. But it also made me stronger, more determined and more appreciative of the simple things in life. In case you're wondering, I still own rental properties, but I'm much more cautious now. I learned my lesson the hard way. I'm not afraid to evict a tenant at the first sign of trouble. I also make sure to have a good lawyer on speed dial, just in case. Looking back, I'm proud of myself for standing up to Mark and fighting for what was right. It was not easy, but I came out on top in the end, and that, my friends, is the best revenge of all. And yeah, thank you very much for the anonymous viewer that submitted this story. And by the way, if you have your own stories to share, feel free to send them to ripereddit@gmail.com, which is always a good way, aside from Reddit, to give me your stories in case you want me to read them in a video. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.